So you're dealing with this constant flood of information, right? Trying to make sense of really complex stuff and defense acquisition. That's a whole different level of complexity. Feels like playing catch up all the time.
It really does. And that's why this deep dive, well, we hope it helps cut through some of that noise. We want to give you that crucial understanding and quickly.
Exactly. And today we're zeroing in on something pretty pivotal, how the Department of Defense, the DoD, can actually use artificial intelligence, AI, to really boost the efficiency of its acquisition processes.
Yeah, and we're not talking, futuristic robots taking over. We mean practical AI. Things like AI automation for routine tasks.
Right, and natural language processing, NLP, for wading through all that documentation.
And also using AI for forecasting and machine learning to get better at spotting risks.
So the goal here, our mission for this deep dive, is really to give you, the listener, a clear sense of how this stuff works in practice, what are the benefits, and just as importantly, what are the hurdles?
Definitely. And we've pulled from quite a few different places for this. We look at AI integration, practical implementation guides, some audio discussions specifically on DoD acquisition and AI.
Explorations of newer stuff like agentic AI, best practices for automating with these agents, news reports on federal AI adoption.
And even some specific use cases for that agentic AI. So quite a bit to unpack.
Okay, let's dive in. Where should we start? Maybe with the scale of the problem.
Yeah, I think understanding the pressure cooker that is DoD acquisition right now is key. One of our sources really drove this home. It pointed out that back in fiscal year 2022, the average federal contracting officer handled something like 2,000 actions.
2,000 per officer. That's staggering.
It is. And just for context, go back less than a decade to say FY 2013, and that number was closer to 300.
Wow. So not just a small uptick. That's a huge jump.
Exactly. It paints a picture of, enormous pressure. It suggests the system is really stretched thin, maybe even facing a capacity crisis. It really forces you to think differently about how the work gets done.
Absolutely. You can't just keep piling more work on people with that kind of increase. So AI as leverage then, how can it help manage this sheer volume? Let's start with AI automation. What kind of tasks fit that bill?
We're talking about those high volume, repetitive tasks, the ones that follow clear rules. They're essential, they take time, but they don't necessarily need deep strategic judgment every single time.
Okay, so the stuff that bogs people down.
Precisely. Automating those frees up the human experts, the contracting officers, program managers, to focus on the trickier stuff, the judgment calls, the strategy, things AI isn't ready for.
Makes sense. Can you give some concrete examples, like within DoD acquisition, what could be automated?
Sure. Think about generating initial paperwork. AI could definitely assist with drafting standard requests, maybe help pull together first drafts of market research reports or statements of work, even purchase order requests.
How would that work? Like pulling from templates?
Yeah, exactly. Imagine an AI looking at approved templates, looking at successful past examples for similar requirements, and basically assembling the foundational document.
Okay, so it does the initial grunt work, builds the basic structure.
Right. And then the human expert comes in, refines it, adds the specific nuances, the strategic thinking. It's a collaboration.
Got it. What else?
Well, another area mentioned was identifying unobligated funds. Finding that leftover money that's been allocated but not spent.
The finding the leftovers task. Maybe not glamorous, but super important for efficient spending, right? It could save real money if it's reallocated effectively.
Definitely vital for resource management.
Yep.
And even at the other end of the process, like closing out contracts, some of the routine administrative steps involved in checking all the boxes for closeout, AI could potentially handle parts of that.
Okay, so maybe these seem like small efficiencies one by one.
But when you think about the scale we just talked about, thousands of actions.
Across the entire DoD. Yeah, those small gains add up. The cumulative impact could be really significant.
Exactly. It's about chipping away at that huge administrative burden.
Okay, so that's automation. What about natural language processing? NLP. Given all the documents and acquisition proposals, reports, contracts, this seems like a huge area.
It really does. Like, could AI use NLP to do an initial screen of incoming bids? That seems like it would save a ton of time.
Absolutely. At a basic level, NLP can do compliance checks. Did the bidder fill out all the required sections or all the mandatory attachments there?
Just that first pass, making sure everything's complete. I can see how that saves hours of someone manually flipping pages.
Right. But NLP can go deeper. It can actually start to analyze the content of the proposals.
Okay, how so?
It could help identify the proposals that seem most promising, the ones that deserve a closer look from the human evaluators.
So not just checking boxes, but getting a sense of the substance. What would it look for?
It could analyze things like the proposed technical solution, the pricing structure, how well the proposal seems to address the requirements laid out in the solicitation, maybe even the clarity of the writing itself. Interesting. So it acts like an initial filter, flagging the potentially stronger bids for the human experts.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
Almost like a highly efficient first-round analyst. And some sources even suggest it could do a quick cross-reference check. Compare the proposed costs against known market data for similar items or services.
A sanity check on the price, just an initial one, obviously.
Yeah, just an initial flag. Does this seem generally reasonable based on market data before the deep dive cost analysis happens?
Powerful first filter. Okay, so NLP helps understand language. Then there's generative AI, which creates language. How does that fit in?
Right. Generative AI builds on NLP. Think about summarizing those massive proposals, hundreds of pages sometimes. A generative AI could potentially create a concise summary.
Like an executive summary on demand. I can see the appeal. Get the gist quickly before diving deep.
Exactly. Or synthesizing information from multiple different reports or sources into one coherent overview. Huge time saver for getting up to speed.
Sounds amazing, but there's always a but, isn't there? I've heard about AI making things up.
Yes, and that's a critical caveat mentioned across our sources. Generative AI can sometimes hallucinate.
Hallucinate, meaning it just fabricates information.
Essentially, yes. It can create text that sounds plausible, maybe even references things correctly, but is ultimately inaccurate or mixes things up. It doesn't know what's true. It predicts what word comes next based on its training.
Okay, so definitely not something you can just trust blindly.
Absolutely not. Human review for accuracy, for verification, is non-negotiable. It's a powerful assistant for drafting or summarizing, but the human is still the fact checker and the critical thinker.
Got it. Human oversight is key. Now, can NLP help with that communication gap you sometimes hear about between, say, the program managers who know the mission need and the contracting folks who have to write the solicitation?
That's another promising area. NLP could, for instance, analyze a really dense technical market research report.
Okay.
And then distill the key findings into a summary that's easier for a contracting officer who might not be a deep technical expert in that specific field to understand and act on.
Making the technical stuff more accessible for the contracting side. Could it work the other way, too? Help the program manager translate their needs into contract language?
Potentially, yes. Imagine a program manager describing their need using more sort of plain language prompts.
Right.
An NLP tool could then assist in translating that into the more formal, precise language required for a statement of work or performance requirements in a contract.
Bridging that gap. Translating mission speak into procurement speak. That could cut down on a lot of confusion early on, couldn't it?
Hopefully. Less ambiguity, clearer requirements right from the start that could really streamline the whole front end of the acquisition process. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. AI forecasting and risk detection, often driven by machine learning.
Machine learning. Right. Maybe a quick refresher. What's the core idea there?
So basically, machine learning uses algorithms that learn from data. They find patterns, they make predictions based on those patterns, and they get better as they see more data, all without someone explicitly programming every single rule.
Learning from experience, but the experience is baked into the data itself.
That's a good way to put it. And a really big application in DoD acquisition is fraud detection.
Okay, fighting fraud. How does machine learning help there? Seems like a needle in a haystack problem sometimes.
It is, but machine learning models can analyze enormous data sets looking across procurement records, payment info, contractor history, all sorts of things, searching for subtle patterns, anomalies, things that might signal fraud but wouldn't trigger a simple rule.
Things a human analyst might just miss because there's too much data to connect all the dots manually.
Exactly. The potential is there to flag suspicious activity, maybe even in near real time, within complex programs, catching things that older systems wouldn't, potentially saving significant amounts of money.
Like an AI auditor with superhuman pattern recognition, constantly scanning the data. What else besides fraud?
Analyzing historical contract performance is another big one.
What kind of insights can you get from that?
Well, by looking at huge amounts of data from past contracts, machine learning can help figure out which contract types, like, say, time and materials versus firm fixed price, tended to work out best for specific types of projects.
So learning from past successes and failures documented in the data.
Right. Or maybe for certain vendors or under particular market conditions. It helps make those decisions about future contract types more data-driven.
So if the data strongly suggests firm fixed price, usually leads to better outcomes for, I don't know, software development support contracts under X million dollars, then maybe that strengthens the case for using that contract type next time, potentially leading to better cost control and mission success. It supports smarter strategic choices.
Makes sense. I also remember seeing something about bio-inspired algorithms. Sounds intriguing. What's that about?
Yeah, that's a fascinating area. Think about how ants work together to find the fastest route to food without a central boss telling each ant what to do.
Okay. Collective intelligence. Sort of. Bio-inspired algorithms take inspiration from those kinds of natural processes. They're showing promise for tackling really complex problems, like identifying sophisticated fraud patterns, especially in things like grant programs, where the connections might be really subtle and spread out across many data points.
Interesting. Using nature's strategies to find complex patterns. Okay, so we've covered AI automation, NLP, machine learning for forecasting, and risk. Let's quickly recap the big potential benefits here for DoD acquisition.
Sure. So number one is greater efficiency. Faster processes, less admin burden, cutting down on that paperwork mountain, speed and workload reduction.
Got it. More efficient.
Then greater effectiveness. That means smarter decisions, better acquisition strategies overall, which should lead to better mission outcomes at the end of the day.
Better buying, better results for the warfighter or the agency mission.
Exactly. And as we mentioned, a key benefit is reducing that administrative load on the workforce, freeing up those skilled people for the higher value strategic thinking.
Right. But it's crucial to emphasize this isn't about replacing people, is it?
No, absolutely not. All our sources stress this. It's about augmenting human capabilities, enhancing judgment, making the human experts more effective at the tasks that really require their skills and experience.
The human-machine team concept.
Precisely. Developing the strategy, defining value, negotiating conflicts, deals, managing relationships, that's where the humans shine. Oh, and one interesting side note, the potential for AI to maybe generate different versions of an RFP based on slightly different strategic assumptions.
Wow, how would that help?
Well, imagine being able to quickly see, side by side, what the solicitation might look like if you prioritize speeds versus lowest cost, or technical excellence versus schedule certainty. It could help facilitate much richer, data-informed strategic discussions early on between the program office and contracting.
A tool for exploring strategic trade-offs visually.
Interesting. Okay, the potential is definitely there. Sounds very compelling.
Yeah.
But let's talk reality. Big organization, critical mission. There have to be significant challenges, right? Hurdles to actually making this happen.
Oh, absolutely. And they're not trivial. Probably the most fundamental one is data quality.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly. AI learns from data.
Just.
If that data is incomplete, inaccurate, inconsistent, biased, the AI's output is going to be unreliable, potentially even harmful. Getting the data house in order is step zero.
And that includes dealing with sensitive data too, right? Vendor secrets, classified info.
You need the data, but you have to protect it. How do you feed the AI what it needs while safeguarding what must be protected? That's a huge challenge involving both policy and technology. Data privacy and security are paramount.
Okay, data's foundational. What about the existing tech? The DoD isn't exactly known for having all brand new, cutting-edge IT systems everywhere. Legacy systems must be an issue. They definitely are. Integrating these advanced AI tools with older, existing systems that weren't built with AI in mind. That could be a really heavy lift technically. It's not just plug and play. It requires careful planning, investment, potentially significant upgrades to the infrastructure.
Right. And even if you get it working, you can't just set it and forget it, can you? We talked about hallucinations with generative AI, but that need for human oversight seems universal.
It's absolutely critical. AI works best within defined boundaries. You always need humans in the loop to check the outputs, ensure fairness, catch errors, understand the context, and maintain accountability. There's always a risk of unintended consequences.
And the AI models themselves can degrade over time. Drift, you called it.
Yeah, model drift. The world changes, the data patterns change, and if the model isn't retrained or updated, its performance can degrade. It needs ongoing monitoring and maintenance, just like any complex system. It really underscores the human-machine team idea.
Okay. Now, one challenge that really jumped out from our sources wasn't just about the tech or the data, but about internal DoD processes, specifically something called the Authority to Operate, or ATO.
Ah, the ATO.
Yes. For listeners maybe not familiar, what is the ATO process, basically?
It's essentially the formal security review and authorization process required before any new IT system, including one using AI, can be connected to and operated on DoD networks. It's about ensuring cybersecurity.
Crucial for security, no doubt. But the source is highlighted as a major bottleneck, slowing down the deployment of new tech like AI.
Yeah, I remember that Stark quote, something like the ATO challenges are eating us alive.
That's a pretty strong language. It highlights that tension between the need for rigorous security and the need for speed and innovation.
It's a tough balance. And it was noted that maybe other organizations, perhaps facing different kinds of pressures or having different processes, have been able to move faster on AI adoption sometimes. What about other internal factors? People, infrastructure.
Good point. Those came up too.
Yeah, you need the right people, right? Folks with the specialized skills to actually build, implement, manage, and oversee these AI systems. And there can be real skills gaps.
Finding and keeping that AI talent in government.
Exactly. And then you need the foundational tech infrastructure, the computing power, the data storage, the network capacity to actually run these things effectively. It requires investment in both people and the underlying tech.
Okay. And then there's the whole regulatory piece around AI itself, which is still being written, essentially.
Right. The rules for ethical AI for responsible use are still evolving. That can create uncertainty for agencies trying to adopt AI. They need to navigate existing rules while also trying to anticipate what future regulations might look like. It adds another layer of complexity.
So trying to innovate while the ground rules are still shifting.
It makes proactive planning and developing strong internal governance really important. And building trust in these systems is key too. Being able to verify and validate what the AI is doing, maybe learning lessons from how cybersecurity tools are procured and validated.
And managing the risks if you're using third-party AI tools, right? What happens if they fail or act unexpectedly?
Absolutely. You need protocols for that. Okay, so for someone listening, maybe a contracting professional or a program manager in the DoD thinking, this sounds interesting, maybe powerful, but where do we even start? What's the practical advice?
The consistent theme seems to be, don't try to boil the ocean. Start focused.
Right. Pick specific, well-defined problems where AI could realistically help. Address a particular pain point. Tailor the solution.
And make sure you have the data for that specific problem, right? High quality, relevant data.
Crucial. You need good data for the specific task you're targeting.
Yeah.
And the other big piece is alignment, getting all the stakeholders, procurement, IT, the mission owners, legal, everyone on the same page.
Shared goals, shared understanding, shared incentives for making it work.
Exactly. That collaboration and shared vision seem essential to overcoming the hurdles.
Okay. Now, we've mostly talked about automation, NLP, machine learning as we know them. But the field is moving fast. Our sources also mentioned the evolution towards something called agentic AI. What's that about?
Yeah, that's kind of the next frontier emerging from generative AI. So traditional automation, like robotic process automation, RPA, follows very specific pre-programmed steps.
If this, then do that.
Right. Agentic AI is different. Think of an AI agent as having more autonomy. It can understand a goal, break it down into steps, interact with different tools or systems, make decisions along the way, and adapt its approach to achieve that goal. More like a proactive assistant.
So not as executing a defined script, but figuring out how to get something done using available tools.
Exactly. It involves more complex reasoning, planning, and interaction. Some sources describe it as the next generation of machine learning, capable of handling multi-step dynamic tasks.
How might that look in DoD acquisition? It sounds potentially very powerful, but also maybe risky.
Both are probably true. Imagine an AI agent tasked with, say, managing the initial stages of vendor communication for a standard requirement. It could potentially draft emails, track responses, maybe even schedule initial calls, interacting with email systems, calendars, databases.
Handling a whole workflow autonomously.
That's the potential vision. We see examples starting in other sectors, AI agents handling IT support tickets by resetting passwords or installing software, or customer service agents answering complex queries, or even sales agents drafting personalized outreach.
Applying that to acquisition.
Yeah.
Maybe an agent could track contract modifications through multiple approval systems, nudging people when needed, or compiling compliance documentation from various sources.
Those are the kinds of multi-step system interactive tasks where agentic AI could theoretically play a role. But, and this is a big but, the challenges highlighted by sources like Confluent become even more pronounced. Ensuring the agent's logic and reasoning are sound. Making sure it's trained on data reflecting reality. with good feedback loops.
Yeah.
Reliability is huge. You need predictable, dependable outputs, minimizing randomness.
Especially in acquisition where errors can be costly.
Absolutely. And data privacy and security become even more complex if an agent has access to multiple systems. How do you contain that? How do you anonymize data appropriately? And again, data quality is paramount. The agent needs access to accurate, current information across all the platforms it interacts with.
So the core challenges get amplified with more autonomy. We also saw mention of different architectures for these agents, single agent versus multi-agent. What's that about?
Right. A single agent system is basically one AI model, maybe a large language model equipped with tools trying to solve the task on its own.
Okay.
Multi-agent systems involve several specialized AI agents collaborating. Maybe one agent is good at data retrieval, another excels at analysis, and a third focuses on communication. And they work together, perhaps coordinated by a manager agent.
So for a really complex acquisition task, you might have a team of AI agents.
Potentially, yes. If the task is very complex, dynamic, or requires diverse expertise, a multi-agent approach might be more robust or effective than trying to make one single agent do everything. You could structure them hierarchically, sequentially, the different patterns depending on the workflow.
Like a digital acquisition team working autonomously on certain processes.
That's the long-term vision some are exploring. It moves automation from simple task execution towards more sophisticated, goal-oriented process management.
Fascinating. But again, emphasizes the need for incredibly robust governance, oversight, and dealing with those core challenges of reliability, security, and data.
Absolutely. As agentic AI evolves, those governance and assurance processes, aligned with all the existing frameworks, IT, data, legal, cyber, become even more critical to manage risk and ensure these systems are trustworthy and beneficial. You need the operational functions in place to handle this level of sophistication.
Okay, so wrapping this up, it's clear AI offers really significant potential to transform DoD acquisition. We're talking efficiency gains, better effectiveness, easing the burden on the workforce.
Definitely, the potential is huge. But, and it's a big but, realizing it depends entirely on tackling those challenges head on. Data quality, integrating with legacy systems, streamlining internal processes like the ATO, ensuring constant human oversight, building the right skills.
It's not a quick fix or a magic wand. It's a strategic evolution. It requires learning, adapting, serious investment, and it sounds like a really collaborative approach across the board.
That seems to be the key takeaway. It's a journey, not a destination you arrive at overnight.
So here's that final thought to leave our listeners with. Thinking about your own corner of the acquisition world, how can the DoD best weave these powerful, rapidly evolving AI tools into the fabric of its operations, balancing the potential with the very real responsibilities and complexities? Where might those first truly impactful AI applications start to make a difference in your area? It's certainly going to be a fascinating space to watch. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.